On today's ChurchTechCast Q and A, in-ear monitors and wedges, Google Hangouts on Air, and the Blackmagic Pro Recorder, and much, much more. Hi everyone, and welcome again to another episode of the ChurchTechCast Q and A show. My name, of course, is Paul Allen Clifford, and I am your host here. I'd love for you to join the conversation and ask your questions, so head on over to trinitydigitalmedia.com/contact, and there you'll find all my contact information, including my Twitter handle, which, if you're watching the video, is under my face right here. Right there. Okay. Which is Paul Allen Cliff, PaulAlanclif. If you just want to remember that, Twitter only 140 characters, so I'm trying to be as short as possible. So it's the shortest way you can spell Allen, A-L-A-N, and I've dropped the second F off of Cliff and the rest of my last name, since my last name is Clifford, just for brevity's sake. So you can hit me up on Twitter using that Twitter handle. That's the one I use most often. Also, if you go to trinitydigitalmedia.com/contact, you'll find my voicemail number, 1-877-763-3246 or 1-877-POD-ECHO to echo back to this podcast. That's why I did that. It's the only two-word thing available that made any sense whatsoever. Or you can drop me an email line, Paul, first name, at trinitydigitalmedia.com. And by the way, trinitydigitalmedia.com is spelled all the normal ways. So Trinity, like the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, digital, ones and zeros, media, not small or large. I got nothing. I was trying to come up with a synonym. Media for podcasting, books, videos, etc., the things that I do. So you can interact with me there, and I would love for you to do that, or just leave a comment on that site. Also, let's talk about my streaming provider, ChurchStreaming.tv. ChurchStreaming.tv provides all the bandwidth for the ChurchTechCast.com network, and I couldn't be happier with them. If you've ever used a service that doesn't provide iOS and Android streaming, huge mistake. In fact, that's going to be the subject of one of my articles coming up, hopefully in Church Production Magazine, is how big a mistake that is, because that's a huge chunk of your audience that you're leaving out. Well, ChurchStreaming.tv does that. And it's not hard to do. It's not like you have to subscribe to a third-party service. You don't have to use some special software that no one can get or that costs $2 billion, nothing like that. Just you set it up with the settings that they tell you to, and it just works. So that's why I recommend ChurchStreaming.tv. So head over to trinitydigitalmedia.com/churchstreaming, and I think you'll be happy with the 1-month free trial that they provide at that location. Also, my pastor's book is coming out very soon. It's What Life Are You Waiting For? So if you head over to trinitydigitalmedia.com/whatlife or trinitydigitalmedia.com/whatlifebook, then you can, that'll lead you directly to Amazon, and you can do a pre-order at that time of the book. Now, the reason that I'm recommending a pre-order is Amazon has the price lower than the cover price right now. And if you do the pre-order right now, when it actually ships, you'll get the lower price. And they won't charge you until then. So if you're thinking, well, I don't know, things are a little tight right now with how cold this winter has been. Well, good news for you, it ships the very beginning part of May, maybe the very end of April. I think it's like May 1st is when it actually ships. So they won't charge you until that time. And I think that is something that you will see which is very, very, very cool. It's a lot of the thoughts and ideas that I've put into place in my own life to basically just pursue the calling that God has on me and the life that He wants for me to have. So head over to trinitydigitalmedia.com/whatlife or /whatlifebook, and that should take you there. So let's hop into the questions, shall we? I have a few questions, some that were sent to me directly and some not so much, but let's get started. Okay, first, via email from Chris Castle. He says, got good news last week that our pastor is ready to step it up with our sanctuary and AV equipment. He asked when we go with in-ear monitors for our worship team, do we do away with the floor monitors we now have? I'm also sending a few pics of equipment that was donated to us and wanted to see if you think any of it can be used in a church setting. Chris Castle. Okay, Chris, I looked through the pictures and you have a MIDI controller, which under certain circumstances can be used. You've also got a lot of fiber optic equipment, which depending on distance might be helpful, but it looks like it's stuff from a few years ago, so it could be that it's not HD ready, and that is your issue. I wouldn't recommend going with an SD system right now. Well, starting with one. If you already have all the pieces in place, then by all means continue and then plan to upgrade soon. But I wouldn't buy standard definition now thinking, oh yeah, this is a great price now, because in 5 years it's going to feel like you're shooting in black and white in the 80s. I mean, seriously, that's how we are. Ultra HD is coming, and it's coming fast, 4K. So people that are saying, I'll save a few bucks today and go with SD, the video is minuscule by comparison to 4K. So that's why I want to dissuade you from going that direction. So I'm a little concerned about that. Also, all the fiber optic stuff, it could be that you don't have enough distance to justify the cost of the fiber optic cabling itself. So in that case, all those pieces are unnecessary. The my mouth doesn't want to work. The equalizer that you got, I'll just skip to that word. The equalizer that you got is something that you could absolutely use in a church setting. So I think that I would do that. So when it comes to in-ear monitors, though, to answer your first questions, at our church we do not use any wedges any longer, at least in the main service or in our satellite campus. It's all in-ear monitors, but there's a couple of things you need to keep in mind. First off, the musicians will not like in-ear monitors if they've never worked with them. Because they'll say, oh, the sound is so dry, I don't hear any of the ambience of the house. The way to fix that is to have a microphone set up in the house and mix that into what they hear in their ears. They will be tempted to pull one in-ear monitor out, and that's bad for their ears. Let me tell you why. Because if you've got any volume whatsoever in the room, in order to compensate with this ear, they will turn up their in-ear monitor pack. When they turn up their in-ear monitor pack, it could potentially do damage to the ear that the in-ear monitor is in, and that's problematic. You don't want a half-deaf musician. That would be just bad. So that's why I want to try and persuade you not to do that. Okay, does that make sense? That you don't want them doing that. There might be occasions where there are musicians that just can't get used to the in-ear monitors and have to use the wedges, but I would really prefer that you don't use them. Ideally, your stage volume would be 0, because you don't want to have really loud stage volume so that everyone can hear their stuff, and then have to mix over that. So you've got stage volume at a certain level. Now you can't go any below that level at all, because then you would only hear the stage. You have to mix above that level. And what if that level is like 95 dB? You see, it can get tricky. So I don't want you to do that. So ideally, you wouldn't use any of those wedges whatsoever. I hope that answers your question. Stephanie Ciardi, Stephanie, I'm butchering your last name, I apologize. On the Church Tech group on Google+, anybody have any thoughts on using Google+ Hangouts on air for broadcasting sermons? I don't see any reason to do that anymore, and this is why. Google or YouTube live events do basically the same thing, but they do it better than Hangouts on air. Hangouts on air would be great if you've got a two-way conversation going or a three-way conversation, etc. going. That's what Hangouts are for, and Hangouts on air broadcasts those conversations. Live events are one-way broadcasts. They can have people interacting, but they're one-way broadcasts. So do you see the difference between those? I want you to use the live events because of that fact. There is something problematic with using YouTube, though, and that is, since customer service is such an issue for them, they've tried to fix it with Python scripts and tutorial help files. But if someone says, hey, if a copyright holder says, hey, that's our music you're playing, even if you have a license for it, which there's the WorshipCast license, and CCLI also has a special streaming license, even if you have those licenses, there's no guarantee that the copyright holder will acknowledge that. I'm fighting a battle right now with one of my shows. I had specific written permission from the original artist before they were signed by any record label. Okay? So they were the only ones who could give me permission, and they gave it to me in writing back in 2005. Now, that record label is saying, you're using our music without permission. No, I'm not. I have permission that predates your permission. So I think I could say that you're using my music without permission. Not exactly, but seriously. So they're not acknowledging this fact that I have written permission that predates their permission. And as a result, my account is like, I'm a little leery of what could happen. At any moment, they might decide that they want to issue takedown notices, which would put strikes on my account. That would remove the good standing, and then any videos over 15 minutes, sorry, no good. And this show typically goes about 30. And even though it has no copyrighted elements, the music is actually provided by YouTube as music that's designed for me to use, then I'm out of luck. And it's taken me so long to build up this following. So that's just something I want you to be aware of. And to have good tech support, I think, is worth some money. Just to be able to talk to a person and say, okay, flag my account as having this license until the renew date of blah, 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 that's worth something. As opposed to every week you got to go in and say, no, remember we got this license? Oh, you don't believe in this license. Now what do you do? So that's the concern I have. Dennis Warner, again on ChurchTech on Google Plus, says, okay, I'm installing a presentation system in a medium-sized church that has no way to run HDMI cables for the HDTVS they are getting. They will be running Proclaim or OpenLP on a Mac Mini. Will an Apple TV or Chromecast work to hook up to the TV? I assume that this method will work, but I'm not 100% confident in this. Does anyone know for sure? Okay. One of the other guys pointed out the way to do this is to make sure you have a dedicated router, or at least a dedicated encrypted SSID off wireless connection that is for the Apple TV and the computer that they're talking on this network. And no one else can get on it. It doesn't even have to have internet access. That's fine. Just have those connected. With OS X Mavericks and later on Apple, you can use an Apple TV as basically an external monitor, so you can mirror to that monitor. So I think that's the way that I would do it, is just to treat that third monitor as a mirrored monitor, and I think it'll work fine, Dennis. Okay, Jeremy Wade on ChurchTech on Google Plus. Anyone have any experience with this encoder? And he shows the Blackmagic Pro recorder. Turns out that what he wants to do is live streaming. I believe that that's the piece that I put into a local church, and it wasn't as good for live streaming. But I also believe that the step down from that, the Blackmagic Mini recorder, takes an HDMI or an SDI signal and brings it into Thunderbolt for MacBook Pro, MacBook Air, any of the current generation Apple computers will take that in. Some PCs, but not a lot, will take that in, and so you could use that for streaming. Just make sure that it works with the software you're streaming with. So I think that's what I would recommend you to try. You can also, you can get a device, it's not Teradek. Maybe it is Teradek. Maybe that's the manufacturer. Anyway, there is a streaming device that will take those same signals in, and you don't need a computer whatsoever. You just plug that into Ethernet, you set it up, and it's dead simple. And that's the only thing that it does. The device is like the size of a pack of cards. So it's a nice little device. It's like $600, so you could buy a computer for that. But if you're buying a computer plus a capture device, it could be that that's a lot more expensive than just buying this encoder streaming device. I ought to add that on that question. Matt Rittgers, man, my mouth is not working today. Maybe I don't have enough coffee. Matt Rickers on ChurchTech on Google Plus. I have a friend asking me about purchasing an affordable camcorder to record their sermons with the intent of uploading them to their website. I don't believe they are looking to live stream at this time, just upload an edited sermon video on Monday or Tuesday. I don't spend much time looking at cameras on a regular basis, but I've been looking at the Canon XA10 as a possible solution. It has XLR LANC control, but only 10x zoom. As someone who shoots creative video with the Canon T4i, it boggles my mind how the XA10 is $1,500 while the T4i is about half that. I know about recording time limits and other limitations that make DSLR that's typically the wrong solution for long recording sessions. What is the current buzz for camcorders for this purpose around $1,500? Well, I've used the XA10 and it's a good little piece. The only thing that I don't like about it is I don't like the recording format. I don't like ABC HD. I think it's really annoying, especially when you have an Apple workflow. There are ways around it, but it just takes, it transcodes the video, and so that takes a lot longer than just dragging and dropping, which is what you're familiar with your Canon T4i. Like, you can drag and drop the footage from a T4i or import the footage from a T4i that just copies it onto the hard drive in Final Cut Pro 10, for example, and then just start editing. So that's a much quicker workflow. Now, there are ways around that, but that's the only problem I have with it. I love the camera other than that. So, James Mindrup, or Mindrup, I'm having trouble with names today. Is it possible to burn out if my motives are relentlessly checked? This is on the ChurchTech group in Google Plus again. Yes, it actually is. You can, just as with exercise, you might be exercising to for the benefit of your health, which is a good reason to exercise. But if you have a good motivation to step out the door and run 1,000 miles, you are still going to burn out after probably a maximum of 50. Maximum. Now, with that said, that doesn't mean that you couldn't train and slowly over time, with rest between times, not burn out. But I think that's a good analogy, is just because you have the right motives doesn't mean that you will not burn out. You need to make sure you have adequate rest, you've got adequate support. It could be, if you have good God-honoring motives and you're called to do something and no one else will support you in it, that's possible to burn out because you're just not able to do everything you're on your own. And sometimes God just wants us to rest. We don't like to hear that in America. We believe that we should work until we drop, but He invented a whole day for it. So I think it's absolutely possible. Okay, Michael Ordonez, again, ChurchTech on Google Plus, in response to a picture I shot of the position I was serving in, which was camera 2 at my church, he says, "What brand and model of camera are you using? What video switcher do you use?" I'm assuming multiple cameras. Well, I can't remember off the top of my head. I want to say it's a Vision switcher, but the cameras are absolutely Panasonic. We shoot at 720p. We have 4 cameras, a wide follow, a close follow, a roving camera on the floor but sometimes on stage, and then one that shoots from the balcony. So that's what we do, and I love it. Okay, Les Brown on the ChurchTech Leaders Group. Hey guys, I'm looking for a new way to control our lobby TVs. All of our TVs are currently controlled by an Extron system that uses small boxes that we control via a web interface over Ethernet. The boxes then control the TVs via RS-232. The TVs work great, but the Extron boxes are a mess. It's a terrible system. I'm looking for alternatives that allows me to do simple things like turning TVs on and off and changing the channels remotely. I'm aware of BrightSign and might be interested in that as an option, but I'm looking for other options right now. Please respond if your post meets the following criteria. You have the system you are writing about installing on your campus and you're currently working with it. You have demoed the system and are considering it for purchase. You had the system previously and wish you had it now. Thanks a lot, guys. So he mentioned 232, and that's a fine option. The problem with 232 is it's distance limited. So I used to do tech support for a whole house audio video company, and a lot of times people would call up and say, "Oh, I've got to control everything with RS-232." First off, not all their devices were RS-232, but they just assumed that it was better than what I'm going to suggest, which is IR. Basically, there are 3 ways to control most devices in this situation. You've got IP, 232, and IR. What he has is he has a hybrid of IP and 232, where his interface is a computer that goes into a box, which then splits out over 232. I assume, given that if it's all over church, unless all over church means just outside the main sanctuary and the cable run is 20 feet, that there is some additional conversion going on, because 232 is distance limited. Well, it depends on the speed that you're controlling it at. But if you go like 19,200, that's really short, measured in meters of single digits. I can't remember off the top of my head how long, but it's short. So that could be part of the issue. But IR for this situation now, you might be thinking, wait, I've got a remote, there's no wires, I can't control that other than line of sight. True. But now imagine that basically what IR is it's an IR LED that blinks a certain way. And so the wire going from the source of the blinking to the LED can be longer. Now, it can't be miles long, but it could absolutely be 100 feet long. And depending on the strength of the signal, that's not a problem at all. So there are systems where basically you take a remote control, you have an IR receiver, you shoot it into the IR receiver, that goes through an amplifier and then splits off the signal however many times you need it to be split off. And depending on the power of the signal, it can be even hundreds of TVs. Now, if you don't want to use the on-off toggle code, because if for some reason one of the TVs doesn't get it, the next time you send it, all the TVs that were on will turn themselves off, and the one TV that didn't get it will now turn itself on, and then you have a problem. But typically manufacturers have, if you look hard enough, discrete codes that are like, this code turns the TV on, this one turns it off, this one puts, and then you can type in the numbers. So it's like 18, 27, 36. You see what I'm saying? So you have all these different numbers that you can type in and change channels like that. And that's a good economical solution. So I think I would at least look at it. You can, by the way, instead of using a remote, that can be a touch screen that's programmed with the appropriate codes. You can even do that over IP. Here in the office, I have, where is that thing? There it is. What was it called? Aviosis, was it? I have a IP piece of gear which plugs into the network, and then it's got a web interface, and then it spits out IR. So I could do it that way, if that makes any sense. Okay. Well, we've been going for a half an hour now. Okay. Okay, Matt Smith, not the doctor, on Church Tech Leaders. If you're you're a fan of Doctor Who, you got that. As Easter approaches, we are planning our scenic design changes. We are also looking to this fall when we launch our first off-site campus location. This site will be in a gym of a community center, but we are also thinking about how just being multi-site affects our scenic design overall. Even if we were in a permanent location, my gut feeling is that there are a lot of designs that we just wouldn't be able to pull off very well in a portable church situation. How do you approach that? Our original stage, where the pastor will be broadcast from, is relatively small, and we typically have elements behind him. 1 week a month we have a small choir, and it is impossible to avoid having a mic stand, etc. in the camera shot. Our feeling is that now we need to create a more consistent background. But do you just avoid camera shot lines? Besides just leaving it black behind the pastor, I'm curious if anyone else has any advice or learned anything along the way. Sorry, I hit the mic there. So what I would do is I would have elements from your design and put those on movable flats, flanking the screen in your portable location. So, those could be wheeled in and out of a trailer every week, no problem. And I would have those elements mirror or be smaller versions of what's going on the main stage, so it kind of draws the two together. Now, I wouldn't say necessarily that it has to be black behind the pastor. I'd just draw all those together. With the choir, what you need to do is you need to have people remove the mics. Oops. Drop my controller. What you need to do is have people move the mics after the choir leaves. Maybe even choir members. Just mute mics, move them. Problem solved. Otherwise, you could have people that that's their only job. They wear black on the day that they're on, and as the pastor walks up, they move that out of the way. Problem solved. So I think that's your other solution. And don't overthink it. Just make it simple and make it work. Don't limit your camera shots unless there's no other way to do it, but that's what I'd recommend. Okay. Tom Kootner Tom Kootner on churchmedia.net asked, live streaming help. We are a fairly small church, and the pastor has decided he wants to get into live streaming. My background. Several years ago, I directed the TV ministry for my church. I could run all the equipment, have the artistic eye, etc., but it was professionally designed system. I do have a good bit of technical knowledge experience up till I became disabled a few years back. I was also a network admin for the last 15 years. We currently have 2 Canon XL2 cameras. We have composite S-video FireWire outputs and a focused MX4DV switch that were bought several years ago. I've been tasked with the list of what needs to be purchased to have us live streaming. I know what I want. A designer to come in and design it, but that's going to have to be down the road. For now, we need to have this done at a reasonable cost in-house. The cameras will be 40 to 65 feet from the switch, FireWire Cat6 extenders, S-video or coax composite, pros, cons, audio. When I mentioned a soundboard for video, he wants to feed off the current board. They have a PreSonus digital board just over a year ago. We still have the old 24-channel analog board. I don't currently have another sound person if we use 2 boards until God brings in another sound person. The current sound guy would have to EQ the video board before service and let it be. Audio is not my strong suit. I'm tone deaf. The sound guy is insistent that we need a separate board. I'm thinking cameras, switch, dedicated PC capture card, SS drive for recording, Adobe Flash Media, encoder, streaming service. That sounds like a good workflow. Oh, the last leg needs to work. Also, we have 500 feet of Cat5 without a repeater between the buildings for the Ethernet connection. I'm debating on just adding a repeater in the middle or telling him we need fiber. Right now, it is about getting us on without making us look worse. We are upgrading it as time goes on, but we have to have somewhere. All help and ideas are welcome. Okay, Tom. I think I would start with coax, but also run the Cat5e, Cat6, whatever you're planning on upgrading to. Make sure the coax is a good start, because that's cheap. Now, it's not necessarily wasted. Make sure you get at least RG6, and then if it's RG6, then you can run that over... you can run SDI over RG6, and so in the future when you upgrade to digital cameras, no problem, you've got RG6. See? Thinking. So that's what I would do there for these analog cameras. I think I would actually shoot at probably, instead of 640 by 480, 640 by 360. That's what I'm doing right now if you're watching the video. And people assume that this is HD because it's widescreen. It's not. It's SD. In fact, it's kind of less than SD because it doesn't have as much height and as much lower, as much upper and lower. It's like watching a DVD that's widescreen. So that's the same thing, but it's really not a big deal. So that's what I would do. Make sure you've got really good tripods. You don't want to buy broadcast pedestals or anything, because those XL2s just won't handle that. But like a Bogen Manfrotto kind of tripod. Make sure you get the LANC connector, and you should be fine. Don't shoot on manual focus. Shoot do shoot on manual focus, don't shoot on autofocus. What's wrong with me today? And I think that you'll get a pretty good signal that most people will think is fine. I think your signal chain sounds good. Ideally, I think I would use that board, and I think what I would have is I would have the sound person have headphones and just send them a feed. So in case during worship, once they get everything set on their board, they could listen to yours and see how it sounds by itself. Get good isolating headphones, and then they could listen to it by itself and go, "Ooh, we actually need more." And then they could call back and say, "Can you just turn up the bass guitar just a little bit?" And you could have someone, basically you could probably train a teenager to sit back there, and when they hear, "Hey, can you turn up the bass guitar?" They turn the bass guitar. "Okay, thanks." And they could even be trained on how to do sound in a listening to what the sound engineer wants kind of way, and trying to figure out how to replicate that every time. So I think that that's probably a good plan to take. So I actually have a few more questions I could answer, but I think that we've been going for 43 minutes, and that's probably long enough. So Um, I really would love it if you would do me a favor and, in anticipation of next week's show, go ahead and drop me a line, Paul at trinitydigitalmedia.com. Hit me up on Twitter, Paul Allen Cliff. Remember the shortest possible versions of those, PaulAlanClif. Or head over to trinitydigitalmedia.com/contact. Leave a comment there. Leave a comment if you're watching this on trinitydigitalmedia.com. Leave a comment if you're watching this on YouTube. Whatever, and I'll be happy to answer your questions. I hope that all of these things are just more ways that you can learn to spread the gospel and be more effective as you're going out and changing eternity. Until next time, I'm Paul Allen Clifford with TrinityDigitalMedia.com.